Going on to emotions, I really like that whole idea of not making decisions when you're sort of overly emotional, because I think generally you have to be fairly balanced, I think, without getting too upset.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a consumer of this kind of psychological literature that shows quite clearly that when we have different emotions, and ranging from when you're feeling negative towards something, when you're feeling angry, to when you're feeling hungry, that you actually make better and worse decisions depending on the direction in which the emotion is going. And you really want to be on neutral zone, so you don't want to be too up when you're making decisions, and you don't want to be too down when you're making decisions. And one of the things that I talk about, in the book is the affect heuristic from Paul Slovak, that really tells us that actually when you're in this emotional state, and they mostly talk about negative emotions, but I think it's also true if you're in this kind of heightened state of excitement. But when you're in this emotional state, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to give yourself a timeout before making a decision. And I think this is particularly true when you have what's known as one-door decisions, to use the new terminology of Jeff Bezos in his book, where once you actually make the decision, there isn't an easy way to turn back. Or when you make the decision, you're going to have spent a lot of money, so then it's going to be emotional for you to sink the costs, and really giving yourself time to pause. And at the moment, I'm working with some companies in technology, actually. And when I talk to them about emotional decision making, I always kind of get, we're in a speedy industry. How long do we have to wait? What is the time? And I think that's a really, really great question. And it doesn't need to be days, it doesn't need to be months. For some of it, it really is just about putting an hour between you and the decision. So that kind of feeling of emotion, that kind of feeling of fizziness goes away. And I can predict a world in like 20 years time and they're already doing this in hedge funds, right? Where people are wearing devices that actually tell you what your physiological response is to something. And I predict a world in 20 years time where we know much more about how our emotions connect to these kind of physiological responses in our body, and where we're wearing devices and I can look at my Apple Watch and say, I need an hour, I need to go take a coffee, relax, or I look at my watch and I can say, actually, yeah, I'm feeling good. I can make a decision. But I think until that time happens, we as people need to build a self-awareness. And if you get an email that you don't like, take an hour to reply to it. If you get a call and it's from somebody who's demanding a decision, maybe put an hour between yourself and that call, even if it makes you ringing out. Not if you're a heart surgeon, you should answer. Everyone else, can take an hour. And I really believe in this. And for me, with my own self, when I apply it to myself, the size of the time lag relates both to the height of the emotion and the size of the decision. And I like to spend the time in timeouts where I won't actually be thinking about the negative event. And a lot of people will kind of talk about doing meditation when they feel stressed, and that doesn't work for me. I've tried in various guises, but what does work for me is going for a walk. What does work for me, and you mentioned kind of Casey in the beginning, is spending some time with Casey in the park, really taking my mind out of it. And I think this really leverages the ideas that Danny Kahneman has put into behavioral science, that everything is nothing is as bad as you think when you're not thinking about it. So if you can move yourself away from something when you're having an emotional reaction, I guarantee that you'll start making better decisions.
And one thing I do want to mention is that I've had this debate about emotions, and people always say, look at Antonio Damasio, where he says, look at your emotions. So I think, there is this sort of debate. Sometimes you have to obviously think about your emotions, and people do say, look, sometimes that is an important indicator. But I suppose the conclusion I would say is that there is obviously some debate. Obviously, you need to make sure that you're not completely over emotional, but there is also a use for emotions. Do you agree?
No, absolutely. And I think kind of the building of the self-awareness as well, that I kind of encourage in Think Big, is figuring out when you're more and less likely to have a mess up, and when you're more and less likely to actually need that time out. So your emotions are telling you something and they're useful. So the fact that you're having this kind of flood of negative emotion, like if you're putting me under pressure today, maybe I have a flood of negative emotions because on my side, perhaps I'm risk averse, and maybe that's unnecessary. Or maybe you're putting me under pressure today and that actually is a bad thing for me. And I think the timeout allows you to disentangle between, is it my perception, or is it actually something negative that's actually going on? And I think over time, when you when you take that break, or kind of when you tune into your emotions just before big decisions are made and how you're actually feeling about something, the building of self-awareness will let you know whether or not some emotions are actually green lights for going ahead, quite honestly. Maybe it's just natural that you get kind of these, I don't know if you've heard about this in meditation, which is the one part of meditation that I like, this idea of the body barometer, where you should get more in touch with how you're actually feeling, how you're feeling in your body. But I think this will differ from person to person. And individual differences is something to always, I think, remember in this type of work. And in Think Big, I really encourage people over and over again to treat themselves as an experiment. So I give these insights that we know have worked in certain circumstances, but I say treat yourself as an experiment, evaluate whether it works. And you know what, if it doesn't work for you, then that's not the insight for you. Choose a different one.